going here. So about the book itself, you can pre-order Let There Be Leads. If you type that in, if you go to Amazon.com and you put in a search for Let There Be Leads, you'll find it. The cover looks just like the one you see on your screen. You can only find it at Amazon.com. It's only going to be delivered in an electronic version via the Kindle store, but I know there's some confusion about that. You can read a Kindle book on any device. So on your iPad, on your smartphone, on a Kindle Fire, on your PC, your laptop, all devices, there's an app you can download, or you can just use their online portal and you can read a book anywhere. So there's really no reason anymore to do books in print, although I know lots of people like to hold that book. If we have a big demand for it, we will print it. We'll do some print on demand and get it out there. But if you want to pre-order, the price is $5.99. It will go up after the release date, which is March 7th. And so I would encourage you to order it before then. And when you do, if you send me at Valerie@ltcep.com, if you send me your proof of purchase or a copy of your receipt via email, then we will put you in our private Facebook group and our private LinkedIn group. So we have two marketing groups, probably going to use the Facebook one more than LinkedIn, not sure yet, just kind of depends on which one takes off. But we do have those private groups established. We do have lots of members already. And if you're attending the boot camp coming up next week in New Orleans, all the attendees get a free copy of the book, and they can be in the private Facebook group or LinkedIn group. So anyway, so just let me know if you qualify to be in one of those groups, and we certainly will get you in there. All right, so let's go through here. The first thing we're going to talk about, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, first thing we're going to talk about is what is a quality home care lead? And if I asked everybody on this call what a quality home care lead is, I would get 227 different answers. So a qualified home care lead can be defined in many ways. Of course, your business type dictates what a qualified lead looks like. Is your home care agency medical, non-medical, or both? Is it a registry? Is it a home care agency model? I mean, what kind of home care agency are you running? Define your business model first. So let's talk about what a quality private duty non-medical home care lead might look like. And again, you may have other variables, but this hopefully covers a majority of them. And we're talking about a quality lead, one that you can actually close and that has a good chance of being able to pay for care. So first and foremost, for private duty and non-medical, you want someone who has private funds to pay for care, or they have long-term care insurance. So you're probably not going to go for the Medicaid folks. In your area, your state laws may be different. The laws in your area may be different, but for the most part, a good qualified private duty has private funds. And of course, they have to be in your service area. And they need companion type services, not medical services, unless, of course, you can do both. Family member contacted your office for services via online form or a phone call. They could be referred by a friend, a doctor's office, a hospital, a rehab facility, or an independent senior living community, assisted living. The client is willing to try home care services, so there are a lot of folks that meet the criteria, but of course, when it comes right down to it, the senior doesn't want anybody in their house or a stranger in their home. So a quality lead is one where the client is willing to try home care services. And of course, Alzheimer's cases and live-in home care cases usually last the longest and have the best margins. So it's important for you to define for yourself what a quality lead means to you. A qualified quality medical pressure checks, PT, OT. There are some homebound criteria, of course. They have to be referred by a physician, hospital, or rehab facility. They have to have a doctor's order, and some home health care agencies may provide senior nursing care and pediatric nursing care. So, so pediatric leads in this case may be really good for you. Even in the private duty non-medical, there are times when the pediatric, some folks still take kids or do what's called sick days. And if a kid's home sick, they really don't need anything major medically, but they need somebody to be with them so mom or dad can be at work. So think about other ways you can define your perfect lead. What would that look like to you? So there are many variations. Do you prefer memory loss cases? Do you prefer folks who have Alzheimer's or some form of dementia? Do you prefer clients who have mobility issues? Maybe you have some extra training for your staff in the area of mobility. Do you offer a transportation service and your staff can lead with that and then work their way into the home care scenario when transportation is not the only thing a client needs? So really defining your ideal lead will help you with your marketing messages. If it's hard to find live-in caregivers in your area, you might want to downplay live-in care services and really emphasize hourly care. Think about the challenges you're facing, what you really want, what is good for your margin, and if you know, for instance, that memory loss cases or Alzheimer's or dementia cases are really good for you, then investing in extra training or taking classes or becoming certified or having your caregivers do extra training is really something you should think about if those are the kinds of cases that really fit your local area and your marketing material. So take some time to define your ideal lead and your ideal client. This makes a difference in how you arrange your marketing materials and your messages. So this entire book, Let There Be Leads, starts out with you defining what your quality lead looks like. If you can write that down on paper, give all the different variables, then you know whether you've been in business for 10 years or you've been in business for 10 minutes, you know what kind of marketing you need to do to get to those leads. You can narrow it down to the right kind of people, the right kind of need in your local area. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and of course all of this is very much elaborated on in the book, but we're going to talk about the cost versus the return on investment of different marketing strategies. So I want to start by saying this. Doing no marketing at all is a negative option. Just because you build a home care agency or you manage it or you start one and you announce it does not mean business will come, because it won't. Any of you who've been in the business for any length of time know what a hugely competitive market this is. Any of you in the Sun Belt or in the state of Virginia or in the state of New Jersey know how competitive this market is. It is amazing how a few years ago there weren't that many home care agencies maybe in your local area, and today there are so many competing for space and for attention and for market share. So it's really important that you figure out what your marketing strategy is going to be. You don't have to serve every client in your local area in order to make a good living and to have a good business. But you need to make sure you're out there getting your name around, and no marketing. Sitting in front of your computer at your desk is a negative. You can't do that. So let's talk about the different types of marketing and what the cost might be. And of course, you have to call and you have to hook up with a rep in your local area to find all of this out for sure. There's no way I could give every single demographic cost for every single radio or TV station in the world, but I'm going to give you some ballparks so you know what it is that you're looking at as far as all these different options. So let's talk about TV and cable advertising. Overall, the cost of producing a commercial can run from as little as $1,000 and upwards to thousands of dollars. A more practical average could be from $3,000 to $25,000. So that's to produce the commercial. Now, you may have a much different methodology. You may do it very differently. You may not have nearly that cost. But if you need them to produce your commercial, you're going to run into fees. So that's the first thing to think about. So the two main costs of TV commercials are a TV commercial needs to be produced of dollars in large markets. If you're a local or regional company and you aren't selling a product or service to a national market, then of course your decision should be to buy local TV advertising if that's the route you're going to go. A commercial on a local station at 2 a.m. can run as cheap as $25 for 30 seconds. However, 2 in the morning may would be cheaper if that's the audience that you're trying to capture. And the most important thing you can do is talk to your TV sales rep and ask them what their demographics are if you're going to go the middle of the night route, which I don't recommend, but certainly find out what the numbers look like. There are a number of factors that determine the cost of broadcasting a TV ad, and this includes the region it will be aired in. Of course, New York is going to be much more expensive than St. Louis, Missouri. The time of day, the day of the week, the number of viewers, the length of the commercial, which can be 15, 30, 60 seconds, or a full 30-minute infomercial, and of course how frequently the ads will run. The cost of a 30-second spot varies according to the number of viewers expected to be watching it. So here's an estimate. A 30-second time slot in a medium-sized market can be purchased for as little as $5 per 1,000 viewers. A quantity of airings is vital to measure effectiveness. So in other words, when that rep comes to you and says, oh, you have to buy 13 weeks worth of advertising, I don't know if you necessarily need 13 weeks, but I can tell you that you cannot just run one spot per week and expect a return on your investment. You have to run a TV ad multiple times during the week, multiple times during the day, at least a couple times, in order to catch your audiences. If you run a commercial just once, it's unlikely you'll see any increase in sales. So repetitive broadcasting, it generates the viewership familiarity that will make your message memorable. So once you've thought about your messages and the market that you're going after, then it's important for you to run those more than once. So you think about a sales rep and you think, well, they're just trying to get me to buy more, so they're telling me I got to do it for 13 weeks. And that's not really, maybe not necessarily true. Maybe you could go for a 6-week test. But they are correct when they tell you that you have to run it multiple times, and multiple times during the week, multiple times during the day. You'll just never catch your audience if you don't. So for a commercial to run one time in a market or time slot with about 50,000 viewers, the cost is about $250 each time the ad runs. And if you run the ad 4 times a week, times 4 weeks, that's $4,000 per month for TV advertising. And that does not include the cost to create the commercial, if there is any. So I looked at a couple of studies out there, and there were 2 that kind of, because what we want to know is, are we really getting to our market, or is this really going to be worth it? So a 3-year study by Deutsche Bank indicated that although in half of the advertising campaigns the return did not sufficiently cover the media cost, the gain from the other half more than offset the cost, so that's good. Another one by Accenture indicates that 82% of TV ads generate negative return on investment. And Simul Media, using data from Nielsen and Kantar Media, shows that in the majority of cases, TV ads are only seen by 20% of marketers' targeted audience. So there's a little bit more toward the negative on TV, and I would say probably that would be the case. Here's a couple more tips in calculating your return on investment, and a couple of tips on just personal experience. In order to calculate the leads that come from a TV ad, be sure to give a recorded and tracked phone line. You can get those for, $10 a month. If you go to you just Google tracked and recorded TV line, phone lines. Those phone lines forward directly to your office line, so there's no middleman. You don't have to worry about that. But every single call is recorded, and you know that if you only use that in your TV ad, that every time the phone rings and someone dials in from that number, that obviously they got your number off of the television. So it's important to get a tracked and recorded line so that you can know how many clients originated from that ad. And here's the other piece of let me go back one. The other piece of information on TV ads. Election years are always more expensive. If you didn't know that already, if you decide to run an ad, I would avoid election years, because you know how all of the candidates in your local area and even nationally are trying to buy spots. So every commercial you see is a political ad. Well, during election years, TV advertising goes up tremendously. Also, of course, in the morning before work and in the evening after work during prime time, those commercials are going to be a lot more costly. And I would also caution all of you out there in the home care market especially that not to advertise during sports or on a sports channel like the golf channel. You may think, oh, lots of seniors watch that, that'd be great. No. First of all, women are usually not always, I get it, but usually the instigators, usually the folks who make the call, usually the people that are kind of behind the scenes or in front of the scene making the decision. But running ads on the golf channel is not going to work. Running ads right before a baseball game is not going to work. So make sure that you pick a time and an audience that's appropriate. You know, you might say, oh, it's cheaper, I'll just run them during the noon hour. But during the noon hour, seniors may be home watching TV, but their adult children are at work. So you have to really take into consideration all of these things and think about that before going into the TV advertising business. Okay, so let's talk about print marketing for a minute. And the first question I would ask any of you who are considering print marketing is why, because I'll give you a few reasons. So print is going the way of the dinosaur. It's not, you know, and not in every case, but in a lot of cases. So unless there's a special event or a celebration that is taking place, there is no need for traditional print advertising like newspapers, magazines, and yellow pages. And again, if you're, you know, wanting to support a cause, that's okay for print. And I've said this for many years, but I'll continue to say it. If you haven't already, do not renew your Yellow Pages print listing. I will say that over and over again. The Yellow Pages are not what they used to be. People are more and more on their smartphones, even seniors. I would not renew your Yellow Pages print listing unless, and the exception to this rule is this, if you can calculate an undeniable return on investment from your Yellow Pages ad, then of course keep up the and don't stop your Yellow Pages ad. But most home care agencies need to stop spending on outdated marketing tactics. So even your Yellow Pages representative will tell you that they want you to get online on the Yellow Pages or YP online. So I would first do it, it would cost a lot of money that would be better spent on other options. Don't let someone talk you into advertising by sending out expensive, full-color, direct mail pieces. If you are sending direct mail to referral sources and you know them and you know, or you know where they are and you know they'll get their mail, then that might be an option. But I would never pick a zip code and send my postcard or my flyer or a letter to everyone in that demographic or in that area. I wouldn't do it. One of the caveats to that is that if you are targeting veterans who are of a certain age because you understand the VA aid and attendance pension benefit and you do business in that market, then you can select veterans of a certain age, and that might be worthwhile. but that's a bare minimum. It's not going to be that worthwhile. So I would definitely stay away from direct mail. Yes, you should print business cards and brochures and flyers and leave-behinds, but keep it light. Full-color brochures are around brochure to print unless you can get a bulk rate. I would keep some. I wouldn't go crazy. And, you know, of course, print advertising rates are all over the map depending on the type, the frequency, and the color versus black and white. So it's hard to do a return on investment on print because there's all kinds of different models. But I would be extremely careful and very, I guess, let's talk radio advertising. So an effective campaign on a popular station could cost $500 a week in a small town, up to $8,000 per week in a large city like New York. So for your money, you could reasonably expect to get 20 commercials, with the majority of them airing during desirable times. Now, this is a recorded commercial we're talking about. The cost of radio So there is negotiation room with radio, and of course, you know, in your local area, you may have a favorite personality, and getting them to do live testimonials, if it's the right demographic for your agency, would be absolutely wonderful in radio. It costs a lot more, but to have an actual testimonial or recommendation from a radio personality that people like goes a really long way, and I have seen that work extremely well. So the average cost per spot's not a great way to measure radio advertising costs, although you probably will get a quote per spot. So depending on the time of the day, the number of people listening to a spot may vary greatly. So you're going to have more people listening, of course, at drive time in the afternoon during rush hour, and at drive time in the morning during rush hour than you are during the middle of the day. And you're not going to have that many folks at night. So the spot that airs at 1 a.m. may have less than 1/10 of the listeners of a spot that airs at 1 p.m. So by including garbage spots, a radio station can make the cost per spot sound very cheap. So if you're buying a lot of, or if you get a proposal with a lot of spots that run in the middle of the night, then your cost per spot goes down. But no one's listening, so it's not a good idea. So yeah, you can get $10 spots in the middle of the night, but I guarantee you people aren't going to pick up the phone and call you in the middle of the night. And if they are up, you know, it's just going to be a really low return on investment. So it's not something to really, you know, be like, woohoo, $10 a spot. It's not going to work. Instead of talking about the number of radio spots, media buying professionals, so media buyers are professionals who buy media all across the country. They look at cost per thousand or cost per point to measure radio advertising costs. So a cost per thousand, what is the radio advertising cost to reach 1,000 listeners? And the cost per point, what is the cost to reach 1% of the population, which is also known as gross rating point, or GRP, within a specific geographic area? So you can be a little bit more educated, ask the CPM or the CPP, what does that cost as opposed to the cost per spot. A CPM in the range of $10 to $20 would be considered normal. So now you have a little extra know when you go into buying radio spots. Okay, now we get to some cheap stuff. Awesome. In-person networking. The cheapest form of marketing is marketing that you, the owner, does on his or her own. Types of in-person networking include, and let me just say this, in-person networking, you are worth an hourly rate. So technically this may be the cheapest because you don't have a huge outlay of cash, but you have an hourly rate that you're worth because you're not doing other things while you're out marketing. Although at this point, maybe that's the most important thing you can be doing. But So you have to consider what your hourly rate is really worth. Okay, cold call visits to referral sources. The cost is your gas, your time, and your print materials. Networking events, your cost is your cost to attend or cost to belong to that organization. Senior fairs, your cost for your booth and your printed materials and your drawing prize. And of course, all of these include your time. Speaking engagements, the cost for repair and print materials. CEU events, depends on your model. So if you are one of those home care agencies that host CEU events for the local rehab directors or whatever, or registered nurses or social workers, then of course you have the cost for the room, unless you're charging for the event, or you have the cost for, you know, tea, coffee, water, snacks, whatever it is you're doing. So it depends on your model. If you're sponsoring a charity event, a walk, a run, you know, the Alzheimer's walk, or maybe Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure, or something like that, it's the cost for attending, the sponsorship costs, etc. So there are some low-cost options and some high-cost options. I would do as many of the low-cost options as I could fit into my week, and I would save the high-cost options like sponsoring an event or CEU events or maybe senior fairs, depending on your area, for maybe quarterly or every 6 months, depending on how much you can afford to do. But doing each of these things the right way, which I'm not going to get into today, this is what Steve, the Hurricane Weiss, will talk about. Doing each of these correctly is really important to get the most return on investment. So that's in a coming webinar. Your business cannot rely on one form of marketing alone. You must be willing to get up out of your chair, go out there, attend networking events, and if you can't do it, find someone who will. Because without your involvement, without your contribution to your community, you are 100% setting yourself and your business up for failure, and that's a guarantee. So get out there. That is absolutely the one thing that I cringe when I hear a home care agency owner tell me that they rely 100% on internet marketing or 100% on this or 100% on that, and they don't want to get out there and meet people and shake their hands. You got to do it. In this day and age, the more visible you are, the better, and trust comes from looking somebody in the eye, shaking their hand, and giving them a pat on the back. So get out there and get involved with your community. Okay, last piece for this webinar, internet marketing costs. So for internet marketing, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that's technical and insane. So I'm just going to talk to you about a couple of things, and then the next webinar we do, we'll get really into all the bits and pieces of things that you need to do. So internet marketing costs include your website, your content. Yes, you need content. You might be doing Google AdWords. You might be buying leads. I'm not sure about these two. Most companies probably have had it with Google AdWords, but buying leads is something that I hear people still do all the time. So let's talk about a couple pieces of this. First of all, your company will. The cost of a home care website depends on who you want to have build it, and you do get what you pay for. So if you go to Wix.com, or if you go overseas, yes, you can get a cheaper rate on your website, but you will not get a website that has even a potential to generate leads. So the approximate cost for a full website development from scratch that does everything it's supposed to do for all the right reasons and has any chance of bringing you in new leads is around $3 grand. I say that some people charge 10 grand, some people charge 15, some people charge 20, but I'm telling you that you can get an excellent website for about $3 grand for what you need, or even a little less than that. So that is one that actually is put together by folks who work with home care all the time. If you have somebody that tells you they'll do one for $500 or $199, then you're barking up the wrong. Support you get will be minimal to none. It just work well. It'll be a short-lived adventure and a waste of your money. So content. Let's talk about content. Once you've built this amazing website, which I will talk about that in depth in 2 weeks, once you've built the amazing website or had it built, you have to have a content plan. And everybody cringes and is like, I'm not going to write articles. I'm never going to do this. I'm not having any unique content. You have to have unique content. You have to have it every single week. It should be professionally written. And I will say this about the home care market in the U.S. and Canada. It needs to be written by American writers or Canadian writers, because if you hire folks from another country to write content for you who were not born and raised here and don't understand the system, most of us, just think about it this way, most Americans don't understand the United States healthcare system as it is. So to hire somebody from another country to write for you, even though you're not talking about plans and policies and HIPAA in your blog content, if they don't understand the basics of how seniors are cared for in this country and what that means, especially in the private pay, and well, actually more so even in the Medicare realm, if you do not have American writers, then you're going to get crap content, and that's just the bottom line. And I can tell you that for a fact, because at LTC Expert Publications, we order between 600 and 700 articles per month. They're all written by American writers. You know, everybody's human. Everybody makes mistakes sometimes, but we are very careful about who writes our content, because we cannot afford to have content or sites that is not unique and that is not appropriate for the U.S. audience, because all of our clients, except for a select few, are in the United States. We have a few in Canada, but most everybody's in the United States. So we have to make sure that the message in that content and the words used in the content are grammatically correct and reflect what a person that in the United States would read and understand. So if you have content written for you, which you can, just be extremely selective about who writes it. And if you hire people at elance.com or Desk or somewhere else to write content, you have to vet that person, because they will put fake profiles in that say they are from the United States, and they are not. So you got to read their examples very carefully. If it sounds weird, there's a problem. So be very careful about hiring out for content. The alternative, though, to that is to write it yourself. And let's face it, you really don't have that kind of time. I know you don't, because I work with so many of you every day. So absolutely, you need the content. Yes, you can have it written, but you have to be very careful or work with a company that already understands how to get that process completed the right way. And so there you go. So content is super important. And we'll talk more about why content is so important in our next webinar. So I'm going to say that accurate internet marketing costs for services that add value run $400 to $1,200 per month per website. Now, $1,200 a month is going to be for folks who have multiple offices and multiple locations and have increasing content needs. But you know, anywhere from $400 to $600 to $800 per month for a single office, depending on the need or the content need. So that's about what you're looking at. Now, for return on investment, for any of these options, except maybe print, you're looking at definitely putting in a tracked and recorded line, telephone line. Do not be afraid of that. Some people don't like to have their phone calls recorded, but I'm telling you, only the people that call that line. So your internet marketing should have one recorded track line. Your website should have a recorded and tracked line on it. If you do a radio ad, it should have a different recorded and tracked line. If you do a TV ad, it should have a different recorded and tracked line. They're cheap and easy to buy. You can get local numbers. It's not a big deal. You can get toll-free numbers, and that's not a big deal. But you have to make sure you know where each piece of advertising is drawing leads. And the other portion of that is that if you say, oh, well, our people who answer the phone will just ask, you know, how'd you hear about us? That's great, and some of you are amazing at doing that. But I guarantee you they're not catching it all, or the person on the other end of the phone doesn't even remember where they found you or how they found you. So it's important to have a tracked and recorded line on every single website, on every single, not necessarily print material, but definitely for any other kinds of advertising that you do. So just look that up online and get yourself a tracked and recorded line and put that on all of your advertising, so you can really calculate your return on investment for all these things. Okay, so one more time about the book, and we're going to have a webinar in 2 weeks that goes specifically over everything you need to do, learn, and know about internet marketing and how to generate leads, Google AdWords, buying leads, all of that stuff. So Amazon.com, electronic only. It goes on all devices. The release date is March 7th. Pre-order now. Once you pre-order, send me a note, Valerie@ltcep.com, and it's all over our website, so you can see that. You have access to our private Facebook marketing group, which is already established, and our LinkedIn group, which is already established. We'll get you in there. Okay, for the next webinar, here is a sneak peek at what's happening. We're going to define online versus offline marketing. So we're going to talk about what online marketing means, which we've hit on a little bit today. We're going to talk about offline marketing, which we also hit on today a little bit. But we're going to talk about more of the networking and referral sources and stuff like that. We're going to talk about where those two pieces come together. In 2015, you have to have both. So we're going to talk about how they come together. Strategy, consistency, and commitment to your online website development in 2015 and beyond, what you should be looking for, what you should expect, and what's important to Google. How to be the problem solver, the authority, the content issues, social media strategies, newsletters, search engine optimization, and how you can be everywhere all at one time without very much involvement, but some involvement is always required. You can't do it without, we can't do it without you. So that's going to be our next webinar. That's a lot of content. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, you are welcome. And I didn't mention that George is on the line. Hi, George. He's probably muted. George, are you there? So if you have any questions, type them into your little question pane, and I shall answer them. So if you have anything, just go ahead and to the question and answer section on your little dashboard. And your question, we certainly can do that. I'm going to give it a, I'm going to count back from 10, and then we're going to be out of here. So 10, 9, what are the topics for the last 2 webinars? Oh, well, that's a very good question. So the topics for the last 2 webinars are going to cover more of the offline marketing pieces, stuff that Steve Weiss covers, and they're also going to cover the step-by-step guide. So in other words, I can give you all this information in a webinar, and I can give you all this information in a book, but what you might want is a step-by-step guide, day 1, day 5, day 10, day 14, what you should be doing, when you should be doing it, how often to follow up, what you should be saying, what you should be doing for your online, what you should be doing for your offline, how often, you know, all those things that you're not sure about. I can tell you what's good and what's bad, but if you don't know when to do it or how much to do it or how much to spend on it, then it's hard for you to get started. So the very last section of the book and the very last webinar in 3 and 4 are going to talk about those step-by-step guides. So that is the last couple of topics. So next week, or 2 weeks from now, will be online marketing. Then we're going to do, and I have to skip a week because we have a boot camp in New Orleans. Then the next week, we're going to do some offline marketing, networking, referral sources, and then the final one will be all about putting it all together in a step-by-step plan. So we're not going to cover all the details. We're just going to tell you what, where, how. So how many marketers should a home care agency have to be successful? That's a good question, Carly, and I believe it depends on your demographic. It depends on how many people are in your local area, the size of your metro area, who you're trying to target. So in an area like St. Louis, Missouri, I would probably, if I were the owner, I would have at least 1 marketer for the St. Louis area. If I was successful and that person was working out well, then I might have 2 marketers. I don't think you need more than that, but if you were in New York City, you may have to have more than 2. It depends on how successful you are, what you can afford. But having someone besides the owner to be able to go out and market the home care agency is awesome. If you are a new company and you are the owner and you're wearing all the hats right now and that's the what you can afford to do, then it's you go out there and you do all this stuff. And if you want to make it work, you know, we got to buckle down, and you know, if you have a dream and you want your business to succeed, sometimes you just got to go with it. Let's see. You said it might be beneficial to send out direct mail to VA specific age groups. Where would you get such a list? Okay, Deidre, if you market to veterans of a certain age because you understand the VA aid and attendance pension benefit, then you can go online to like Info USA or anywhere. You can buy a list. You just type in a Google search for buy a list of veterans in my area, and you can buy a list from list company that's out there. There's tons of them. Just Google it, buy list of veterans or something like that, and you'll find it. But Info USA is one place where I know you can get them. Should we use companies that update the websites on a regular basis? They can be very costly. Yeah, you should actually, Anita, and they don't costly. It depends, you know, you have to consider this. When you have a website, that should be at least, you know, you can't rely on one form of advertising. You know radio is costly. You know TV is costly. So it's down to, and print is should be only the bare minimum that you need to keep stuff in stock for your marketing and things like that. So it comes down to two things. You getting out there and shaking hands, and your internet strategy. Those two items are probably your best bet for a full marketing plan. Your in-person networking doesn't cost you as much usually, and yes, your internet marketing does, but it's worth it in the end because you're either going to get a lead from a referral source or you're going to get a lead from like a consumer that's referring to you, or you're going to get it from a telephone call or your website. Those are the four places that leads are going to come from: phone, form, which phone could be from the internet or referral, and then your in-person referrals. That's where leads are going to come from. And so to me, the best money spent is to make sure those items are in the best shape possible. And yes, a website is no longer a calling card. A website is no longer your online brochure. Your website needs to be ever-changing. It needs to be up-to-date. It needs to be engaging to your audience. If it's just a one-pager or even a 10-pager that never changes, first of all, I can't, you know, the back end of it has to be the data, all the stuff behind it should be updated. But if it never changes, Google's not going to give it as much importance as one that constantly has good, unique content. So you're fighting against competition who is managing their websites very well. You have to do the same thing. Your internet presence is sometimes, and a lot of times, the first way people get to know who you are. If your website sucks, then they're going to look at your website and go, if they can't keep this up to date, if this is looking this bad, then what does that say about their caregivers or their office or their people that they use? So make sure your websites are up to date and make sure that you're updating them regularly. If you don't want to pay somebody to do it, you can always do it yourself, but most people don't have time for that. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. So I'm going to say thank you and goodbye for this afternoon. We'll be back in 2 weeks with part 2, which is going to be super, super fabulous. And we'll talk to you then. So thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.